professional, that she loved to work for better or worse, that she had to work,
Can I
that
just
her
see
work
the
was
cover of your book?
innovative professionally and creatively. Set up for us this time period in
Thank
these
you.
3 episodes, 1956 through 1958. Just tell us a little bit about what Lupino was doing.
Neat. Thanks.
That allowed her to have these 3 different television experiences.
Well, in 1953, she had just finished The Bigamist, which
That
was
mic
the
is
end
terrible.
of the filmmakers. So she had to work, and she had to support her family. So she.
You're like Lupino on This Is Your Life. You can do it. You can do it.
Wasn't that so cringy? That was great. So she had to get work. So TV was looming, and she was horrified of TV. She thought this was going to end her career. Everybody in film thought TV was a career ender. And so little by little, she was convinced by Four Star to go on and do some TV acting. So she did that, and she liked it because it was like 4 or 5 days. She was done. She made some money, and and she was very innovative. So she liked to do different things. So she did Mary Surratt, The Trial of Mary Surratt. Joseph Cotton Presents, and she was interested in that story because Mary Surratt was the first woman who was executed in the United States. She was executed for taking part in the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, which she always denied. So then after that, she sort of got her feet wet, and the Screen Directors Playhouse came along, which was a very elegant way to sort of enter TV, because there were a lot of good directors who were fluidly going between film and TV, and Anthony Mann was one, Frank Borzaggi, Bill Aldrich, very, very good directors who were on Screen Directors Playhouse. So, that was something she really wanted to do. That was 1956. Okay. After that, 57, 58, were the 2 seasons of Mr. Adams and Eve, for which she got nominated for Best Actress both times. But she lost, I think, Donna Reed or someone. Yeah, she was always underestimated. So then she did those 2, and she was kind of a star, really a TV star. She was the only person to make sort of a double transition from film to TV as an actress and a director, and then TV, again, actress and director. And the only other person to do that was Orson Welles, and he was considered the auteur, and she was forgotten. So it was very interesting, this sort of 54, 55, 56, 57, because she was doing comedy, she was directing serious films, and I think particularly the reason I like Screen Directors Playhouse so much was you could see the hybrids that she used. She was using film noir, film gris, and a little bit of just a straight crime thriller. She also had expert casting. She saved time by casting people with baggage. So Bill Tallman was a serial killer. But he was kind of a serial killer with a reason. He was left in a well by his father with 5 of his siblings, and everyone was adopted except for him because he had a slow eye. So you kind of had a feeling that Bill Tallman wasn't totally bad. He was sort of the medium in the morality. Teresa Wright was the center of good. Peter Lorre was the center of evil. He was the eternal foreigner, stranger, scary foreigner, serial killer, child molester from M. So she cast these people, and in doing so, she got great actors. At the same time, she didn't have to explain anything to the audience. That was 27 minutes. And, it was set up perfectly. It's a cabin in the woods, it's dark, it's isolated, and she's deaf, and there's nobody there. So something horrible is gonna happen. So her lighting is incredible. It's very noirish. She used Paul Ivano, even though it says Lester White. It says Paul Ivano also, but she used Paul Ivano because Nicholas Ray used him, and she had used him in the past. And Lester White may have been somebody that CBS just had under contract, and so he always got a credit. I don't know. Maybe Mark knows. I'm not sure. But it was so she had this great casting. She rehearsed. She shot very elegantly. She introduced Peter Lorre from the back. She gave him a lot of independent activities to do. And I think, sort of that sort of 27 minutes shows many things about her style, her ability to direct actors, her genre hybrids, and
How many feature films had she made by this
she
time?
did 6.
So she's already made 6 feature films when she comes to do her first TV episode at Under
I think she probably made more features than a lot of the other directors who are on Screen Directors Playhouse. So.
Let's just talk a little bit about This Is Your Life, as that's our
Was
example.
that so cringy?
Example of the real Ida Lupino
Oh my God.
or not. So the nature of Edward's show is to bring family and friends, to some familiar, some from the past, to the surprise guests to tell them about their life. So what is going on in this episode? What picture is this episode painting for 1950s American viewers of Ida Lupino?
Yeah.
Walk us through some of the complex layers here of.
Well, she, as Edward said, she spoofed the show a year earlier in 1957. This was 1958. Also, in 1958, she and Howard were divorced right after the ending of the series. So, in that, what I saw, in every time I see that, is she is ready to kill Howard, for sure, and has had it with him. But what's really interesting is she had spoofed them earlier. And so he's getting back at her now. And she is someone who always wanted to surprise people. She's full of suspense. She wanted to scare people. It's very important in her filmmaking to do that and to be realistic. But she never wanted to be shocked or scared or surprised. And she's a perfectionist, so you're never going to see her raw. This, you get to see her, and this is why the archive's so great. You get to see her raw, one glove on, one glove off, smiling but not smiling, but looking horrified, but then, it was so cringy. I almost don't know what to do when I'm watching it. And she was very different with each guest, For one second, Ralph Edwards, she thought was going to ask her a question about her past. I don't know. I'm not good with facts. I don't know. She just doesn't ever want to be off guard. And I get that. But the first person who came, she really enjoyed seeing him, the Uncle Barry. When her sisters came, her sister and her best friend came, she seemed a little bit more at ease telling stories. When Bill Wellman came on, she was very respectful of him because he gave her a boost in her career that was amazingly important for her. It was 1939, The Light That Failed, and she really wanted to play this Cockney actress, and she wasn't up for it, and she convinced him. So she had a whole different demeanor when he came on. She was very respectful and appreciative that he had come to be in this thing, this is your life. When she was with the people she had discovered, Sally Forrest, Mala Powers, she was, I think, the most relaxed. you know, because she's with people she had nurtured, and she had this sort of nurturing quality. And I thought it was weird that her daughter came running out. Like, didn't she just see her that day? Oh, I just thought it was so weird. And her mom, you know, and everything. But it's part of
That's sort of the nature of the show, that it's
Yeah.
got this weirdness, like to send a 5-year-old little kid out on stage
know.
and she's just clinging to her mom.
And here's
That's
your
painful.
husband, who you just saw 30 seconds ago in the real estate office. I mean,
Yeah, who you are getting a divorce
from.
That's weird. Those pieces of life.
In your book, you write of Lupino, in the creation of her own paradoxical image, neither masculine nor feminine, but always mother, is where I believe Lupino is best understood and reconsidered. Tell us more about how Lupino used mother as part of her creative and celebrity persona. We see it a little bit in the Edward
Yeah.
show.
Well, she didn't want to be seen in a bad way. She was the only woman out there for 21 years directing, so she kept her head down and she didn't want to be noticed that she was a woman. And so she tried to have sort of a masculine edge and just be nondescript. And she never had a legacy or an archive or anything, because she just wanted to work. And I kind of like that about her, that she wasn't like thinking about her, you know, how she was going to be remembered later. She just kept working. And so the mother thing came up because she felt like it was a way, kind of a kindly intimidation of the actors. Like, how are they going to say no to their mother? And she had mother written on her, like, you know, chair, and they called her mother. And that was the way she got out of being too feminine or too masculine for producers or anybody who might want to come after her and say you can't direct. And she used it all the time when she was directing television. And you know, it was just kind of her clever way of avoiding it. I mean, they made her write articles that feminized herself. It was kind of ridiculous.
Wait, who's they? In what kinds of publications?
In general, the Hollywood would say, we want an article on how you do landscaping, Ida, or we want an article on how you set the Thanksgiving table, or we'd like an article on, you know, a little bit about your wedding to Duff, or, you know, we need your recipe for a lemon mousse and, you know, meatballs and stuff. I mean, you know, so she had to write, because she was a writer, she wrote them herself, so they were pretty good. But she didn't, you know, she didn't really want to do it, but she had to.
It's the 1950s,
It's
so
the 50s.
she has to she has to sort of manage that balance
Yes.
between an expectation of women and being a professional in one of the most competitive fields. Although let's talk about representations of women directors, because the Mr. Adams and Eve episode is just mind-blowing. It's not anything we could ever imagine.
It's hard to see. It's really hard to see. And Magic Mark Quigley, he got it.
And it looks beautiful.
It
Oh
does.
my goodness, it's amazing. So the films that Ida Lupino directs are social dramas, noir, stylistically aligned with noir, with social realism, oftentimes featuring first-time actors like the ones that are recognized on the Ralph Edwards show. Why does she make this hilarious, self-reflexive, satirical sitcom about Hollywood and her own celebrity? Why does she choose to do that, and what do you think she brings with her to that TV show from all her film work?
Well, the other shows, the other sitcoms that were on were I Love Lucy, The Honeymooners, and these were housewives who didn't want to be housewives. In Lucy's case, she was always trying to get on stage with Desi and be kind of famous, and never could. And there was an undercurrent of anger, but you don't see it in Lucy. It's not obvious. But the Honeymooners, Alice Cramden was pissed off. She hated her husband. He was just a bus driver. She used to put him down all the time because he just drove a bus. She didn't have a good TV. She didn't have a good refrigerator. And, she just complained all the time, and she was overtly angry. In the case of Lupino, of this Mr. Adams and Eve, she didn't have to do housework because she was a famous movie star. So she was a failure as a sort of a housekeeper, because she did something else. So she took the opposite tack from those two shows, and there were others like them too. And she went around and pitched this thing, and most of Hollywood said no. We're not. Why are we going to spoof ourselves? And finally, I don't know if it was CBS or NBC. They said yes, we'll do it. So she was putting on both sort of a documentary about Hollywood and spoofing it at the same time. And so it was a sophisticated sitcom. It was 25th. It ranked 25th in those 2 years, all those sitcoms, and it was always well reviewed. And she, as I said, she got these 2 acting nods, nominations. But I think she was reacting to the other sitcoms that were there and trying to do something different. She was always trying to do something different.
And that she puts herself and Howard Duff at the center of it, maybe, makes it seem like it's less pointing fingers, because they're pointing fingers at themselves as well as just Hollywood culture.
But she was making double the money. So she was making money for herself and Howard because she was the breadwinner. So a lot of times she was working on her own, but when she could, she would get work for Howard so that they had, could make ends meet.
And maybe to also manage the power dynamic.
Yeah.
What was her creative role in Mr. Adam and Eve beyond, co-starring? Was she a writer, producer?
No, she wasn't credited for any of that. Saul Sachs did all the writing, but she was, she made cuts. She made suggestions. She did some of the wardrobe herself, I'm sure. Makeup. She probably suggested lenses. Saul Sachs, she didn't want to write it. She didn't want to actually have that responsibility. But Saul Sachs would say they'd go over to their house, they'd have some martinis, and they'd talk, and they'd come up with these episodes. This one particularly was so interesting to me because when I was doing my research, I was doing some study of reviews about The Hitchhiker, and it was pretty consistently well reviewed. And it was her best, I think it was the best movie she's ever made. She thought the same thing.
What year is The Hitchhiker?
1953, 52, 53. These 6 films kind of overlapped because she was constantly doing one after the other after the other. So there was this review of The Hitchhiker that gave it a rave review and never mentioned the director. Never.
Does she have a writing credit on The Hitchhiker?
Yes. Yeah. There's a story by, but for somebody else, but yeah, she has a writing credit. They never mentioned it. So this, I know, had to be her idea. Let's do this thing where nobody can remember who directed The Hitchhiker. I mean,
We all know the director.
Oh my God.
Such an amazing.
Yeah. It was unbelievable, really, that this review, I can't believe it. I think it was the Hollywood Reporter. So.
It's incredible to see that episode, to see any moving image documentation of women directors during periods like this, the 50s, when it's Ida Lupino is this singular director.
People couldn't handle it. They just couldn't handle it. Even a lot of female critics or reviewers couldn't handle it either. They just, they had to find fault with it. It was unbelievable. So,
Lupino's work as a performer for many is associated with noir and drama and crime. I mean, certainly in the 40s, High Sierra, They Drive by Night, Out of the Fog, Roadhouse. What's her capacity for comedy? We're seeing it in the sitcom, but what were her opportunities to be funny in film and TV in the 50s and 60s?
she wasn't given a lot of opportunities to be funny. She did some stuff with Lucy, Lucy Summer Vacation. She was really funny in that, like funnier than Lucy. They both rented the same summer cottages, but Lucy and Desi did, and then she and Howard Duff.
The premise of
Yeah.
the episode.
Yeah, and
That's
she
it.
was hilarious in that. And I think she directed a couple of those episodes too. Her father was a famous comedian. You can see him on YouTube. Going Fishing is a really, really good one. It's silent. Her uncle, or her, I don't know if it's her uncle, her father's cousin, Lupino Lane, was a really famous comedian. Her mother was a musical comedy star. So she's had great timing, but she just wasn't given those kinds of roles. And she also, in TV, was not often given love stories or romantic comedies at all. They gave her hard, tough action stuff, which is so funny because they didn't want to admit she existed, and they didn't want to admit that she was in this masculine profession, but they wanted her to do hard driving action, crime, and noir. It's really an anomaly. I guess they couldn't overlook the fact that she really did a good job, and she brought things in under budget and on time, like that. Yeah. I am so cold.
It is.
I think
chilly
I
in
was
the
sitting
theater
under
tonight.
something over there, and I'm so cold now. I'm like,
You have a chapter in your book titled Hitchcock, Ray, and Aldrich. Alfred Hitchcock, Nicholas Ray, Robert Aldrich, which you describe as a guerrilla alliance.
Guerrilla alliance.
What was Lupino's creative partnership like with those three directors? What connection are you making?
There are lots of connections. They used each other's DPs. They appreciated each other, respected each other. Hitchcock later hired her to act and direct some of his episodes. She finished one of Nicholas Ray's films because Nicholas Ray had a nervous breakdown.
One of his films or TV shows?
Films.
Oh,
Yeah.
which one do you?
Yeah, let me think.
Sorry,
No,
it's
that's
not
okay.
nice to quiz.
No, it's fine. I think, I want to say, not in a lonely place, where she was, Robert Ryan was in it. Does anybody in the
Dangerous
audience?
Ground?
Yes,
Dangerous Ground.
yes,
Yeah.
thank you. And she had to finish that. And I guess it was kind of I don't know, it was kind of a funny finish. I mean, it wasn't great maybe, but she and Robert Ryan did it together, and she never really admitted that she did it. She didn't want to take that away from Nick Ray in any way. The three of them moved, and Aldrich too. She worked for Aldrich as an actress in The Big Knife, which I really think is a interesting film because it's full of method actors. Okay, it's got Rod Steiger, Gene Hagen, who else?
Shelley
Shelley
Winters.
Winters, Wendell Corey, who was in some of Orson Welles' films, and very, really serious method actors. And she never really liked method act. I mean, she wasn't against it, she just didn't deal with it. But she was more understated in that film than any of those method actors. Really quiet and very understated.
And that movie's 1955, so
Exactly.
just the year before these three.
Yeah, and Jack Palance, for some reason, was the center of the movie, and he wasn't anything. I mean, I don't know what you call his acting. It was just Jack Palance. And Aldrich was really good with actors, and she liked him a lot. He came from he was an assistant director, which is a really not an easy way to become a director. But he would get there first, 6 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was, and he'd leave at the end of the day after everyone. And she was like that, like really a hard worker. And she admired the way he directed actors. So if you're interested, that's a good film to watch because her acting is really, really fine. And I think maybe he he asked her to do some things, some mindful things, you know, and I think she was trying to do that. And I've never seen a performance of hers quite like that. It's interesting.
Let's take a couple of questions.